How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Lumix Live this week. For those that have obviously looked at the title of this particular stream, we're going to be talking all about the BGH1 today with a number of special guests on here, including my nemesis, Matt Frazer, to talk about, production, how this camera works on set, and Matt's shaking his head off camera here in the chat group. But before we get into all of that and introduce everyone that's here and show you some cool stuff that we've got going on, we're going to cover some basics again, like we always do. So if this is your first time with Lumix Live for these streams, welcome. We do these streams on a weekly basis to offer an opportunity to all of you to have conversations and get your questions answered by experts in the different fields of photography, videography, and manufacturing. So those of us that are in the industry. You can ask your questions by tagging @Lumix Cameras in the YouTube chat bar. I have it open here. I believe Jack Salamanchek will also be monitoring those questions as well. So make sure to get those in there as we go through this conversation. What else did oh yeah, I always keep forgetting. Again, all of these sessions are recorded, so once we're done with these, they'll go right up onto the YouTube channel, so you can watch them later. So make sure to hit like, subscribe, all that kind of fun stuff, so that we can help continue delivering these productions out to you guys. Before we go into the full conversation, I want to remind everybody that we have a number of things going on at Panasonic Lumix that are out here to support you, the content creators, in the field. If you're a diehard user that really puts your equipment through the ringer, you'll probably want to make sure that that equipment is kept up to date and kept in good working order. So we have a couple of different programs. We have the Lumix Pro Service Red, which is the free open service. You get your 3-year warranty, all that kind of fun stuff. So if you've wanted to register for that 3-year warranty, do it over on this site, use the QR code there. Or if you're a more diehard pro user, we have the Platinum level program, which is a paid for service level, but it offers you a ton more benefits over what the Red series does with cheaper warranty repairs, all that kind of fun stuff. So if that's something that interests you, make sure to go take a look at that site. Again, I'll put these back up at the end of the stream, so you'll be able to take a look. And there are some promos going on, so it makes it a lot easier to get into those programs. So with that, let's actually kind of jump into, what are we actually talking about? And for that, we're going to take a look at the BTS video that was shot about the Cold War Kids concert that was held during CES for Panasonic. Check it out.
We were approached to help demo this new box camera that Panasonic's coming out with. They got this great venue, Area 15. It's got beautiful Panasonic projection on all the walls and a lot of laser effects and cool video effects. So we thought, what a neat place to do a demo, show off what this camera can do.
So today we're shooting with 6 Panasonic BGH1 cameras that they refer to as the box cameras, because if you look at them, they are a little box, a little cube. And they're these super versatile micro four thirds cameras. And then we even outfitted one with a cinema zoom lens and put it on a jib. So we were able to swing that around and get a lot of different angles.
There's a myriad of lenses that you can put on there to use for different shots. We're actually shooting a full music video, which is a completely different application from something that this camera is probably designed for, but we thought, let's see what the camera can do.
What's unique about these cameras is you can use them like your standard cinema camera or ENG style camera. They have SDI out, HDMI out. But what's also really cool about them is you can put an Ethernet cable and power over Ethernet, control over Ethernet, so you can have a whole array of cameras all networked into one base station, and then one person can control all the functionality of the cameras.
And because it's all power over Ethernet and all controlled by the Ethernet cable, there's not a lot of limitations to where you could put it. I mean, it could literally go anywhere.
You can hide them and mount them in a corner or on a car if you're going to do a car shoot or something like that. Or hide them in the drums or behind the keys. Or you can build them out and make them into a handheld rig or put them on a jib or steady cam or whatever. It's just essentially the options are limitless. We were able to shoot vlog on these cameras, which was great because there's so much bright and dark and everything. So I wanted to maximize the dynamic range, and able to shoot the vlog was great.
Panasonic.
All right, so that was the BTS piece that was shot about the production around the concert for the Cold War Kids that was held during CES, and I'm joined by the production crew that worked on this, as well as Matt Frazer, again, as I said, my nemesis. So, let's do a little bit of a round, kind of round table, and just tell everybody who you guys are and what you guys did during this. As I make sure I fix this to full screen. Let's start with you, Riz.
Hi, my name is Michael Rizzi. I'm a LA-based cinematographer. Shoot features, commercials, documentaries on a host of different cameras all over the world. But actually, interestingly, I have the least amount of experience in live multi-camera production, so this was a particular challenge and a new thing for me to do.
Cool. Let's go right around. Carolyn.
All right. Hi, I'm Caroline Scott. I am the executive producer and partner at Merritt Andrew. And I really just hire great people to make sure things look good and know enough about everything to be very dangerous. But yeah, and my job in this, I'll go over the project once we introduce everyone.
Yeah,
that's
awesome. And how about you, Warren?
Hi, Warren Tash here. What Rizzi is to cinematography, I am to live events. So I was the live side of this equation, brought in by Caroline. Thank you, because we've been doing stuff together for many years. And my specialty is basically corporate staging of anything from investor groups to medical conferences, but I do specialize in live. So they brought me in to help build this live system, and happy to be here to help.
Awesome. And then, Matt, everybody knows who you are. Feel free to jump in and give everyone a little bit of a background, because we do look like we have some new people on the stream today.
Yes, I am the Sith Lord to your Jedi Knight in this particular situation. You are correct. I am the Dark Knight. So I work in business development for Panasonic Lumix. Basically, I am out there trying to make sure people know about our products, make sure that they fulfill the needs of photographers, cinematographers, videographers, anybody who needs to be able to use our products. I'll wrap it up there unless you need anything more, Sean.
No, that's pretty good. That about sums it up. Yeah.
Okay.
So, so with this whole project, this is, I think, kind of an awesome thing for Matt and I to see, at least, and I feel safe speaking for both of us. Seeing the product that we launched a couple of months ago actually used in a full-blown production in such a short time from when the camera was released out. So I think it's probably good to hear from you, Caroline, like, what was the process of actually going into, like, how did this all happen?
Right, no problem. So we have been working with Techniques for a while now, for a couple of years, and we had helped them launch some of their brand product videos earlier in the year. And then up came the opportunity to bring, Cold War Kids to life at CES. And that was a really big event. And we really wanted to make it feel as if the viewer was there at the concert, because as you know, we all can't really go to live events right now. So we wanted to bring the live event home and do it in a unique way where it's not just one camera or two cameras. We wanted to have enough for there to be 6 different angles that the viewer could be in control of, and they felt like they were right there on the stage. So that led to a lot of discussions on what type of camera we should use. Do we want to use several different cameras? How seamless could we make it? And that's when we, the idea of using the box camera came up because of the versatility and the ability to use it in several different angles, several different ways, which I'll let, the experts, Warren and Rizzy, talk about a little bit more. But yeah, it gave us the flexibility and that seamless look all the way through.
Nice. Yeah, and so that kind of hits on, obviously the main points that this camera was created for is, being able to fit into so many different applications that normally you'd be using much larger cameras with. So I actually want to throw this part actually over to you, Warren, because I'm curious, with the live streaming aspect of all this, and Matt, obviously feel free to jump in, if I get off track with some of this stuff. So Warren, with setting up a camera for a live event like this kind of platform, what goes through the process for, like, picking the camera, going in through rigging, that kind of stuff? Like, what are your main points that you look for and build on?
Well, as a live events guy, and this project was kind of interesting because it was kind of half music video that we wanted to end up with, but Caroline said she wanted it to be a live concert. So the first thing we always think about with live staging and live concerts is redundancy, because if you're live and something stops working, you have to have plan B. You have to have a way to still get the recording, still get the camera angle, the camera shot. And we were trying to capture 6 different angles without any failures, without any problems, without any, it had to be perfect. So first thing I said was, gee, I wonder if this camera can give us multiple types of recordings and multiple types of outputs. So we started doing some experimenting with it. Riz got a hold of one early and he started playing with it, and we both started talking about what it could do. And the cool thing is this thing will put out HD SDI, HDMI, and record internally to vlog all at the same time. So all of a sudden I started thinking, wow, we could record multiple formats consecutively and use a couple different types of recording media type recorders, because it does have an internal recorder in the box. And we also wanted to be able to monitor what we were doing because we were shooting it live. So this turned out to be the best choice to use this camera because it gave us all those outputs at the same time. And we were able to use multiple outputs to do multiple records and monitoring and do it in a live environment. And it worked out great.
Yeah. So Sean, if I can just chime in just for a second here too. So as Caroline outlined, the initial goal of this project was to be like that old school DVD experience where you could choose different camera angles. If you remember, like the old school DVDs, you could do that. The goal was to give people the ability to change camera angles while they're watching the footage. And they initially thought of the box camera for really nothing more than like an isolation on the drummer, an isolation perhaps on the keyboardist. And then it was going to be either 270 studio cameras, and then it started migrating over to, do we want more of a cinema look? So are we going to bring in Varicam? Are we going to bring in Eva and mix that in with the box camera? And at the end of the day, when they looked at the Ethernet connection as well for the product and the ability to be able to have one centralized location to control all cameras from one spot, plus all of the outputs that the camera had, I think it just came down to why add complexity with 2 to 3 different cameras when we can work with just a single solution for all the isolated shots and get the look we're going for.
Right.
Absolutely. And to add to that, our timeline for this, we only had about a week and a half to turn this around. So having all the different cameras would have made that more complex, as well as the Ethernet ability to have all the cameras roll at once. There was no match problems. It made it just so easy for us overall.
Yeah.
Both the live process and the post process had to happen quickly. So this camera kind of ticked off all the boxes that could help us do what we were trying to do.
Nice. So in a in a normal, kind of workflow, how different is the time frame that you had to get this project ready to go than some other, kind of similar type projects?
Well, I don't know, Riz, you want to talk to that? What do they book you a year out sometimes?
You're talking about the pre-production process?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing is that we couldn't physically scout, obviously, because of the pandemic. You might have heard of it. So we couldn't go there. So we had to do all of our pre-production and everything like this virtually or by phone, or we would get like the schematics of the place and sort of like draw up diagrams, and I would make diagrams of where the cameras would go. And Matt sent me out a camera and a handful of lenses to play with. I'd never seen the camera before, so it was it was just sort of like using our past expertise and sort of like knowing the general direction we wanted to go. But I was the last, between all of us here, I was the last person brought on. So there was already a lot of things in place. The live element was in place, and they brought me on to sort of give it that more cinematic look. And I have experience with music videos and sort of live music elements. So I was sort of like the last puzzle piece, but it wasn't a ton of time. Really, the main thing was that we had to do it all remotely, which was a challenge.
Yeah, and overall, we started this process maybe a month. Sorry about the friend that I have wanting in and out.
Dogs always add a lot to the show.
Right? It's live. We had about 2 months to pull this together, which sounds like all the time in the world. But when you think of, working with a high level talent such as Cold War Kids, also working with, the Panasonic team and with Area 15, who was Area 51, which was absolutely a joy to work with. They were great.
No, 15, you were right.
I was right.
15 was right. Yeah, 51 is
Sorry, my friends. I was right.
Yeah. There were no aliens on this project. There were no aliens on this project.
Full disclaimer. Yep.
Yeah. But working with all those people together to come up with this creative remotely was something that could have been a massive undertaking. But because we ended up with the one camera system and working with the team at Panasonic, it really helped, at least my anxiety, knowing that when I walked away, when we were done, even though we were racing to the finish line, I knew we were going to have one easy to work with file. Or 6, I should say.
Right. With the redundant copies, so we actually had more than that. But
I think it was more like 18, but that's great.
18, yeah.
And the best part, when your client is providing you the gear, you can always blame us if it messes up. So it's it's your guys' fault. It was your equipment that messed this whole thing up. So.
Exactly.
There you go. So actually, with the cameras kind of, on set, obviously looking at the BTS video that we showed at the beginning, there were a ton of different configurations that you guys put this camera into. I'm curious to start with probably the first thing that some probably would notice is I want to talk about that application that you had for the jib arm and how you had that camera rigged up for that kind of application, because we've talked about this in the prep for this stream, but a lot of people that aren't used to working on a production your scale would probably look at that jib arm and say like, whoa, that's like crazy overkill. Why would you use that for a camera that's, the size of my hand? So I'm curious if you could give everyone kind of that background into the process of working with that and also how you set the camera up for it.
Well, I'll start and then you keep going with it, okay, Riz, because you helped a lot with the cinematic lens that you ultimately put onto that. We use one of those great cages, or the small HD great cages, right, to get everything so it would work on the jib. But yeah, there's
one like this one here.
So even though it's a really small camera, we still wanted some of those sweeping music video kind of looks where you can, if there was an audience, you would have turned back around and shot the audience. But I mean, you want a sweeping look to come in on the lead singer. You want a look to shoot from behind the drummer. You want a couple different angles that are flying in and out. So we just use the same size jib that we typically use for music videos. So we kind of cover everybody up on stage. And just needed to find a way to make that work. And Riz and his team were very creative, finding ways to use these cinematic lenses. Which type of lens did you end up putting on that jib? I forget, it was the zoom, right? With
yeah.
full
So
motor control.
we got a lens from DZO. They sent us out one of their micro four thirds lenses. I forget what they call it, but it was a 10 to 24, which gave us sort of a wider range, because I knew that angle was going to be our widest. We didn't just have like a back of the house wide shot, because that's just kind of boring. So we had to use that as our wide shot. So I was in communication with the jib operator via comms as we were going, and making sure that we had the wide shot when we needed it. So we put that on the wide end, and that lens specifically, I didn't want to use the Lumix lenses, which are great lenses, but they're not really set up for putting cinema style accessories on. So there's no focus rings to put a follow focus or zoom control or anything on it. So it makes it much more difficult to control a lens remotely on the end of a jib arm. So Matt worked with DZO and got us this lens to use, and it worked out great. It gave us all the sort of the focal length capabilities and the ability to control it, and so that's how we went. And also just the fact that we built the camera up to, I think I said it in the BTS, to work on a jib. A jib arm is just basically a stick on a fulcrum that moves around, right? And so you can put anything on there. You just have to make sure you attach it properly. So with the small rig cage that they provided, and being able to put a base plate and rods, I mean, these are all simple things, but you just have to build it up correctly.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of Ethernet cable. A lot of Ethernet cable.
Yeah, a lot of Ethernet.
Yes, miles of Ethernet cable.
A lot of Cat 6 everywhere. Yes.
Yeah, Matt.
And Sean, specifically to the jib, I think sometimes with a production like this, people who are watching us now would say, well, I can't possibly afford a jib that's that expensive. And I think the key here is that sometimes it's what you already have versus what's right for the product.
Sure.
I'm not going to go out and ask a production to go out and buy a much less expensive jib if they already possess the jib that they use all the time, or what's available in rentals. So sometimes you just can't rent a smaller jib arm, because those smaller jib arms they tend to be purchased. So the key here is we could have absolutely executed the jib shots with a less expensive jib if we wanted to. There's a lot of options out there. They're just not available for rental, and they're not already owned by the production company. So you use what's available.
Yeah, and to that, I mean, it's also the talent. So the jib operator, he's been doing this for a long time, and he does live concerts. So that's what we really wanted, was that person who knows, like, can feel the music, can feel where he's going to go. So I know when I'm looking at, and Riz is talking to him, that we have the shot every time.
Exactly. He doesn't care what cameras on the end of his jib. He just knows how to swing the jib around and point it in the right direction. So it's,
Yeah.
Nice.
And so, I think that the coolest part of the camera is it can be stripped down to a very, very small form factor. It's very hard to identify the cameras in this particular piece, even though they're sitting on tripods, because they can be made so small when you're doing isolations of the two, like the drummer, the pianist. So you can build it down and make it light, small. You can also build it up and have it work as a proper cinema camera, which I think is the flexibility of the platform.
Yeah. So we have a question in the chat from Redbit, who's asking, if we can give kind of an overview of what lenses you guys actually ended up using, because I know, Riz, you mentioned that the DZO lenses were used, and then some of our lenses were used as well, right?
Yes. So the the 5 other cameras were a collection of the Lumix. I believe they're like the Leica Lumix lenses. So the two I had 2 cameras, sort of the mounted cameras, one in front of the drummer and one in front of the keyboardist, that weren't operated. So I had to get something wide. They were sort of like low and close and wide. And that was on a zoom. Those were the 8-16s, I believe, on the wide end, so you could kind of see everything. And then there was 2 other cameras on the sides of the wings of the stage, and those were, I believe, the 12 to 35, something in that range. And then the camera in the back of the room was, I want to say, the 50 to 200. Is that
The one that
right?
was on
Something
the
like
ISO one, the
yeah,
lead
that
singer.
one was sort of like the lead singer close up. So I wanted to make sure that, you know, he always had his sort of close up that you could always cut back to, and then of course on the jib we had the DCO. Yeah, exactly. So you know, they're all on zooms. I wanted, you know, it's good to use zooms in this situation because you have one take to do it and to be able to get to, you know, change your focal lengths. You're not going to be changing lenses in the middle of a song. But they turned out to be really great. They're really great, sharp lenses. And like I said, I'd never used this camera. I'd never used these lenses before. But I was impressed with the look that they gave.
Yeah, and I think that the variety that you were able to achieve with all the different lenses and having the zooms and just really made it, for at least the main cut that we did, just very dynamic and fun, which could have been very late night talk show. We didn't feel that way. That was our goal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think what was
Sean,
really cool about this space too was the background, unlike my background, was this awesome projected wall of stuff that the guy at Area 15, I forget his name, but he created these custom projections based on the music. And I wanted to make sure that for the cameras that weren't operated, that were in the same position the whole time, that there was a lot of visual interest in the shot. So that's why I wanted a wide shot focused on the talent, but then a lot of other stuff was going on in the background. So it wasn't just their face that you would cut back to every time. There was, you know, a whole bunch of interesting things happening. So
for the tech nerds out there, they were actually Panasonic laser projectors that were shining in the background. So I thought that was kind of cool, you know?
Yeah.
We use Panasonic in the staging world all the time. So their laser projectors are pretty much the go-to projectors.
So that kind of like that whole idea of, you know, showing obviously the background and things like that. I think something that gets lost with a lot of people, you know, when you go to set something up like this, you set a static shot up and it goes. So it's cool to hear how much attention gets put into the entire environment. And the lead singer's intro in the actual concert video, which we'll link at the bottom of the in the description for this video, he says it perfect, I think, right up there, is that the experience you guys provided everybody was that experience as if you were up on stage with them, being able to move through the band and see what's going on. So it was cool to see how everything got actually implemented into that. Matt, I think you were going to jump in a second ago, unless you forgot what that thought was.
No, I surprisingly, I didn't forget. So Caroline, I wanted to touch back. So obviously the majority of these were Panasonic lenses, and then we had a DZO lens added into the equation. I think you and I noticed that the DZO, it has a different look than the Panasonic lenses did. And so it was a little more work for you guys to have to kind of get that lens to match up with the rest of the Panasonics. Did you find that you had to do a lot of adjustment with all of the Panasonic cameras, or were our lenses pretty well matched to each other, even though they're different focal lengths?
You know, in post-production, this was incredibly easy. And we did not have a lot of problems matching any of the other cameras. And that's mostly because we were given, you know, we brought in, and just so everybody knows, we were working on an Avid, so that proves that these are really great to work with. But but we brought we had ProRes 422 HQ files sent out as well with everything else, and that made it really easy to match up. We also had a LUT that Rizzy set on site, which also made it easy to match up. So really keying between the different cameras was very minimal. Really just that one lens was different, and that's where we'd have to go in and tweak a little bit with our color, but the other 5 were great. I cannot say any more how easy it was in post-production, because that was such key for us to turn this around. I mean, Matt, you saw we finished, I think I drove back on a Thursday and we had a cut by the Monday afterwards, and that's after watching 3 rounds of the show. So
Yeah.
If I could add to that,
On
Matt,
Monday.
go ahead. I was just going to say, from a technical geek standpoint, what I thought was cool about it, since all these cameras were controlled power over Ethernet, so we set up one profile on the computer, right? And then we cut and pasted that profile to all the cameras, and then hit a button, and bang, they all matched. I mean, it was like, it's so easy compared to all the the other ways to do it. I mean, not if you're controlling all the cameras with one computer. I mean, think about that. It took away all that time that it would have taken to individually match and set up all these different cameras. That's really why they all matched so well, because they're all exactly the same profile.
And Riz, I think you're the one who decided to introduce a log profile into this workflow. Can you briefly explain why you chose log for this and what its advantages were? A lot of people out there probably understand, but for those who don't, I think it's important for them to know why log was so important.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So my background, like I said in the intro, is more on the narrative, commercial, music video side of things. And when I shoot those projects, I always want to preserve the most amount of dynamic range, and you shoot in a log format to do that. And I'm not exactly sure what the workflow is in live. It seems like it's just going out there and there's a live shader working on all the and so we didn't have that. I knew that this was going to be shot, edited later, so we'd have the opportunity to do some post color. And the reason why I wanted to shoot in log, other than that's just what I'm used to doing, I knew that in a live event, live music environment, if you saw the BTS, if you see the actual show, there's so much difference in brightness and darkness. It's big, bright backlights, lights moving around, everything. So I just wanted to make sure that the guys in post had enough to pull things down if something got a little too bright. And then it's also a lot easier to match the cameras. And so, like you were saying, the camera with the DZO lens, it was slightly different than the other ones, which is fine and kind of normal because all lenses are a little bit different. So there's a little bit of matching that needs to be done regardless of what you use. But one of the challenges we wanted to do, because of all this redundancy that we put in, I wanted to record as much of the recordings in camera and out in the log format, but also view with a LUT applied to it. So the fact that we could have the internal recording and then send out HDSDI with a LUT attached, and then we sent, I believe, an HDMI version log to an external monitor recorder and then put a LUT on just the monitor, but it was recording log. There's all these different ways we could do it, just that I could have a redundant log format.
And it was nice for me as the director because I got to see what the final product was going to be right there on the screens. Like, I knew what I was walking into. A lot of times, you look at your monitor and there's a color bandwidth in there, and it was great. It's really great.
Yeah, I always
so Caroline, you were actually
view with a log on it, with a LUT on it, just so you can kind of get an idea of what it's going to be like. Otherwise, people kind of it looks flat and kind of ugly, and you're like, just wait, it'll look good.
Yeah.
So Caroline, you were getting LUTted footage. You were actually seeing it with a LUT applied. in a like a 9-up sort of a view, or like a 6-up in this case, 6 images
Yes.
side by side. And Warren, we did not deploy a LUT box, right? So that was all the LUTs being output over SDI from the cameras, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
And we just put it up on a couple of 70-inch monitors, in front of Caroline, so she could say, "Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that." Make sure she loves all these shots, and she could monitor them in real time. And we're also recording in all the formats that we wanted to capture at the same time. It worked out great. And again, I have to say, I don't think that would have been as easy to do if we couldn't control it all by power over Ethernet, because all these settings, if you had 3 or 4 different cameras out there,
I would have had to toggle through.
That's right. If you had 3 or 4 different cameras, you would have had to go for each camera. There's different menus that would have, told us how to do what we were trying to do. As opposed to that, we had one button push, and it was all the profiles were the same, and it really sped up our production process. It really did.
And not only that, I really like the fact that this small camera has SDI out.
Yes.
Is great, because
Huge.
I am not a huge fan of the HDMI connection for anything other than your home TV, because it is so like it'll break. So the fact that there's an SDI on this camera is really awesome. But there's both, which is great. So you have options of how you want to output. So and
Ethernet output too. I mean, you had 3 different outputs at the same time. It's great.
Yeah.
And so something that Riz mentioned, which is a shader, and Sean, I know you're enjoying this not talking. I know it's really hard for you not to talk, but I'm gonna take over just for one more second here. So
go for it.
Our audience may not know what a shader is, so I'm gonna just quickly define this. Think of it as a colorist for live television, and they sit there and they make adjustments, and they initially try to tweak and match all the cameras together as close as they can. But we also have a limited dynamic range for broadcast, and so as the lighting is changing in the studio, or in this case, the concert venue, they're periodically making adjustments to brightness to prevent things from being clipped, depending on what's happening. If we're working in a log format, we don't really have to worry about so many of those things during production. And since this was going to be a 6-camera shoot where people could literally switch from camera to camera, you can't have one camera angle that's isolated, that's constantly fluctuating up and down in brightness, because it's just going to look bizarre to the final person watching it. Like, do these people not know how to use a camera? So I think that log also worked well for the multi-angle functions that we were trying to incorporate.
Yep.
That actually brings up the next kind of question I was going to ask about it, is that, so, obviously we're talking about a multi-camera shoot. Multiple different angles, all different, all recording internally, all going back to like the video village kind of, centralized location. How did you keep all those cameras in sync for post editing? I don't know who can answer that one best.
Standard time code is, we use that as our basis. Time of day time code is our basis from there. And then again, because these cameras are all controlled PoE, that made it easy.
Well, yeah, and because they're controlled PoE, she says, like, she super understands that. Just kidding. Yeah. I'm just kidding. but because they are all, we hit a button and we don't lose a frame. Like, they all start at the same time. Whereas if it was all, human beings, it would be at different times. So that was so fantastic for us in post-production. Again, it lined up perfectly the first try. And there was no audio sync issues, because on top of this, the audio was being pulled into to the Cold War Kids sound techs, and they were leveling that out. So we weren't even taking the sound off the cameras. So that was another layer that I had to put together within post production to make sure they all sunk well.
So,
by me, I mean Michael, who is watching this, our fantastic editor, did all of that work. I just facilitated his work. So thank you, Michael.
So Warren and Riz, did you guys actually jam time code into these? And was the project short enough to where you didn't feel like you needed to use Genlock at all? I'm just curious.
We just decided time code would be enough.
Perfect. That's what I assumed. It's not like a 2-hour concert, so I didn't think you'd need Genlock, but
right.
But hey, it's available if you did.
Yeah.
Right. We were trying to keep it simple. You know, we were trying to make sure we knew what we wanted and we knew that would work and we knew it would make it easier in post. So, you know,
and you don't have to run six more cables to the cameras for your gen lock generator.
We had
to keep
enough
putting
cables.
the
We
gen
had
lock
plenty
in.
of cables.
Yeah, we had plenty of
I
cables
get
on
it.
here. Lots of wire.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've talked about, you know, PoE and power and how you guys actually delivered, you know, obviously control and power to the cameras, but were there any locations where you had the whole thing set up where PoE was either challenging and you had to go to a different power solution, or was PoE the solution for all of them?
I think we used it on all of them except maybe the jib, right? We didn't use PoE on the jib.
No, we didn't use it on the jib. We decided, actually, I think it was just because we didn't want to run any more Ethernet. Yeah, but it could have done. But it was all of them except for Ethernet. So we had to just roll and cut and do that manually, which was fine. But that's just shows the versatility of this camera. Like, that was so cool. It's literally a box and you could do anything with it. Build it up, build it down. But I would very much recommend getting that small rig cage that Matt has right in front of him. That thing was key. And I think that they should include it with each sale of the camera. Because you can't really do much without it. But it was really helpful. It was really, really helpful, honestly.
The camera has mounts built into the sides of it.
You gotta buy it separately. You have to buy it separately.
Yeah.
But but it's really great. Like, it comes with its own little magnetic. Yeah, it's amazing. So that allowed us to put the camera in all the configurations, which was great.
Just as a disclosure, Panasonic is not putting the small rig cage with the box camera. That is an accessory you have to source on your own. Sorry, everybody.
Thanks, Riz. Thanks. Appreciate that.
No, put it in your shopping cart when you buy it.
There you go.
Yeah. Make it part of your production budget.
It's very important. It's important. That's the first accessory you should buy with that camera, I think.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. So with all the different, you know, kind of rigging that you guys had for it, you know, I obviously, again, for everybody that's watching this, either go on the Lumix Cameras channel. We have the actual BTS video that we played at the beginning of this, or you can just scrub back and, you know, watch it again on this stream. Obviously, when we're done with this, you wanna hang around for the whole thing. But there were so many different ways that you guys had the camera set up. So how did this particular, you know, style of shooting, and maybe I'll probably throw this one over to you, Riz. There were the two shots, one in front of the drummer and one by the keyboardist. You know, if you weren't using a camera like the box camera, how easy or difficult is it to set up a shot like that in a normal kind of setup, like if you're recording for a music video?
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking. How easy
wait,
is it? Like, if you're...
One thing here, Riz, it would have been like putting a big camera on in the middle of our set. So for me as the director, it was an absolute no, because then you'd see these two cameras there. So Riz, for you,
yes,
yeah,
for in a multi-camera situation, yeah, you wouldn't have wanted to put a big Varicam there, because that would have just looked ridiculous. Initially I wanted to have it mounted like on a little arm or something on the drum or on the keyboard, but then we didn't end up doing that. We put it on tripods, which still kind of blended into everything. You couldn't really see it.
Yeah, you couldn't see it.
And I would say that angle, those angles in the past for something like this on smaller budgets, bigger budgets, whatever, they would put like a GoPro, right? But a GoPro looks, frankly,
like a GoPro
in low light. Like, it doesn't look good. So the fact that you can have a similar wide hidden camera angle, but it completely matches all the other cameras.
Yeah.
I mean, I think is pretty amazing. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So I have a question for you, Riz, because
Yes.
as you said, you had not shot with these cameras before, and realistically, I don't think you'd spend a whole lot of time with Lumix products at all. So
No.
I'd like to get, but you've shot DSLRs for video. I'm certain of it. You've used them for B cam, C cam work. What's
Okay.
your opinion of what's your opinion of the box camera as that B camera, C camera product?
You know, it's actually a pretty sweet little camera. When you gave it to me or lent it to me to mess with, you were nice enough to run through the menu system with me, and sort of help me get it set up. And then I took it out and ran around my backyard shooting my kids a little bit. And I realized, I didn't even realize, but there's a little built-in microphone too. So there, I was like able to shoot little home videos with it. But just the fact that it shoots log, I just think you know, I own, full disclosure, I own Alexa Minis, and that's sort of like the premier camera. But I could totally see this being a C camera, like a little mounted camera, if you were gonna, you know, have to hide it up in a corner or put it in a car or put it, you know, somewhere that you couldn't really get a big camera. And because it shoots vlog, because it has so many capabilities to export your signal to view, I think that you'd be able to color it and match it properly. So I mean, I think it's just a really great little versatile little camera for sure.
As a tech geek, I love that it has internal redundancy, right? So you can record on one card and you can have a backup recording on the other card. I mean, how many cameras do that? That's really a great feature.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into, obviously, you know, the camera design from the manufacturer perspective. And I know when Matt and I were going through the launching of this camera, you know, getting it ready and actually, you know, kind of presenting it to everybody with the rest of the team, there was a lot of points when I was doing the interview with the original content creators that did the, you know, some of the launch pieces for us, and seeing how this camera that we've been talking about the entire time for this stream, sitting on a high-end level production, is also easy enough, and it's so cool that you said it, Riz, that like you could easily just take this camera and go film home movies with it. I mean, it's a pretty high-end home movie camera, but then also turn around. Yeah, but you could. And then be able to turn around and do the stuff like what we're doing every week here with the Lumix Live platform, where the box camera is what's filming right now as my camera, strictly because of all of the things that are working as you described, Warren and Carolyn, because you can control it remotely. You don't have to be going to every single individual camera to change settings, to match them, see if they work right. There's so much built in around this, and I think, Matt, you're using a box camera too, right?
Yeah, that's why I raised my hand when you mentioned it. So this is a box camera.
Yeah.
So I think the ultimate point there is that anybody that's been, you know, kind of looking at this kind of camera, where you're balancing between doing a large scale production in cases like what we've talked about today, all the way into the wedding and the event videographer that has had to adapt their video recording style, which eerily matches what we've been talking about today. Remote control, having multiple camera angles set up, and not having a massively large production crew to man every single camera. You've got one piece of equipment that can bridge that for you and allow you to grow through the whole platform. So we're coming up close to the end of the scheduled time for this stream. So I want to just remind everybody, if you guys have questions about what we've discussed today so far, if you guys have questions for the team while they're here, make sure to drop the question in the chat with @LumixCameras, and we can kick that over. I see a couple of the questions that were asked. There was one question asked about that LUT that you used. I believe you'd said that was one that you created, right, Riz?
No, actually, that was just Panasonic's standard Rec 709 LUT. Matt gave it to me. We put it in a 3D cube format, and I just put it on the cameras, and it was great. So.
Yeah, to clarify, Sean, the on-camera recorder monitor, in this case, they were Blackmagic video assist monitors. That's what was used. They don't have the Panasonic LUT in them, so you have to load a LUT. But we wanted to make sure we could record log in that device. So, obviously we could have output the LUT from the box camera into the monitor, but then you wouldn't be recording log anymore. So that's why it was done that way. And then we used the internal LUT generator for sending out to the Aja recorders. So we had a LUTted backup in case we needed it in some Aja recorders. And then that's what was sent to Video Village so that Caroline could check up on it and periodically slap Riz in the back of the head and say, that shot's not the one I want. So she could fix stuff periodically.
Well, I wasn't allowed to touch him because of COVID.
Had a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No contact. She had a bat and she was just hitting him in the head with a baseball bat periodically.
Yeah.
So that actually kind of like for my own kind of curiosity, how did working in this, like obviously in the pandemic period and the COVID restrictions that we're in, how did that change this production for you guys? Just as a general, I mean, not necessarily about the cameras, but what changed from normal?
Caroline, you should speak to that one.
Other than my anxiety level? No. I mean, not a lot changed in this particular production other than, we were all tested beforehand. I wanted to make sure that this was a very safe environment. And we wore masks the whole time. And we did social distance, most of the time. I didn't get to hit Riz, like things like that. And then, of course, pre-production was just like this. We're all just on, Google calls the whole time. So, but overall, if there was no pandemic, this production wouldn't have happened. So I personally think this was a really cool thing that we got to do in the midst of a really not cool time, right? And it was such a great opportunity for my team because I got to bring, Warren, who is all live events, together with Riz, who is all cinematic, pull it together and create this really cool look. So, it only changed that we had to wear masks the whole time and eat outside in the cold. I mean, and get things stuffed up our noses. Like that's it. That's it. Yeah.
It actually kind of, it actually, I think I mentioned this on the day, but it kind of felt like a little bit of a treat because we were actually, when the few of us who were there were actually witnessing live music, which is like nobody can do. But it was, as far as my workflow, maybe we had a few less people on set than we would have had, but pretty much everything else kind of, once we got, Caroline worked hard to work out all the kinks and get the COVID restrictions and all that. Everyone was, sort of business as usual once we were there.
Well, and we've all been working in production in the middle of these unprecedented times. So we've gotten used to, you just stay away from each other. You wear your mask, most of us double mask, and you wash your hands a lot.
Go with it.
Yeah.
There was a guy walking around giving hand sanitizer every 5-10 minutes. So that was
and wiping down everything.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, it's again really cool to hear how everything kind of like worked through this. We have a question. Derek was saying, where can we see the end result of the video they're talking about? So Derek, on the actually in the description, we're going to update actually with the correct link for the actual concert if it's not there already. So you'll be able to click over and watch the broadcast. I don't believe that broadcast has the multi-angle setup for it, so you can't switch between cameras there.
That's a funny story, actually.
Yeah. But yeah, so the actual end shot, the full compiled kind of hero capture of it is up there, so you guys can take a look and listen to some Cold War kids there. But Matt, what's the story behind that you were saying?
Jesus. So first of all,
you brought it up.
First of all, if you don't want to wait for Sean or somebody to update the link, it's on the Panasonic North America channel. It's not on the Lumix Cameras channel. So if you just do a quick Panasonic North America search, you'll see our Panasonic North America link, and you can watch it there. Yeah, our friends at YouTube may have at the very last minute discontinued the ability to do multi-camera angle from within YouTube. So Caroline and her team had to scramble to effectively put together a solution within a web interface that synchronizes all 6 of the angles simultaneously when you hit play on one of them, so that you could then select another camera angle and select another camera angle, and it would seamlessly pick up from where the previous clip was left off. And I think that just goes to show you the amount of creativity and knowledge that the production team had on this project, that at the very last minute they scrambled and were able to put that together for us. And so on our CES page, we had all of that functioning thanks to them.
And that's thanks out to Bob, who did all that. So
there you go.
Give credit
thanks,
where
Bob.
credit is due.
saved our bacon on that. Thank you so much.
So Matt, just to prove you wrong that that they don't have to wait, I did drop a link down into the chat there. So the link to the Cold War kids is in there. Well, again, I want to thank all of you guys for taking the time and having this chat with us. This is, just like I said at the beginning, this was really cool to actually see and hear from professionals that actually worked with this camera in the real world, and not just kind of the all theoretical, hey, it can do it. I think everybody that joined us live, learned a lot from you guys. So yeah, again, thank you guys so much for joining us on this stream. I really appreciate it. And we'll definitely have to, hopefully come up with other projects in the future and maybe work together again. That would definitely be kind of cool in my book. So
we'll do all the live concerts you want. Then I get to see live music again. No.
I'll play.
It really was a treat, and it was a really fun project for all of us to work on. So thanks to Panasonic.
Yeah. Well, cool. So let's see here. So again, I want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to thank our guests for taking the time to actually kind of give us their insights. As a reminder for everybody that tuned in, if you were new to this, we do these kinds of streams every week on Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Varying different topics. Last week was on the mobile app and how to use that. The other streams we've done are more along the lines of this kind of presentation. So a big, huge mixed bag of content for you. And every single one of these streams that we do is archived on the Lumix Cameras YouTube channel in the Lumix Live playlist. So you can go back to some of the original streams that we did here, which I guess you can. They didn't look that great, but they're there for all different kinds of topics. As another reminder, if as we mentioned at the beginning, if you are a professional and you're working in a professional environment and you put your equipment through the test, we have a number of different service solutions out there for you guys with the Lumix Pro Services, the free tier to make sure you guys can get that 3-year warranty, and some of the other kind of extra benefits there. We also have that Platinum Series level for the really kind of hardcore pros out there for discounted warranty repair rates, faster turnaround times, a really cool welcome kit with a really nice custom strap and all that kind of fun junk. But yeah, otherwise, again, thanks for watching. We'll be back next week, Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time with a kind of an Ask Us Anything type of stream. So definitely tune in for that. Going to be more of an open kind of flowing topic, and we'll get you guys some more information as we go through the week on that. And if you have suggestions for future topics, or you guys have questions that you want to have us address during these streams, make sure to email us at lumixlive@us.panasonic.com, and we'll integrate those into future sessions. So once again, thanks for watching. See you next week.